Hello and welcome to today's virtual user group. My name is Kim Manown and I'm part of the client development team here at Smartsheet. I'm joined today by Mary Potter, who is a project management lead at Equity Bank, and she's agreed graciously to present a few slides and talk through her process. And she is welcoming all ideas and challenges that you all have, and please add in at the very end for the Q&A. So to provide some context, Smartsheet User Group Program has been created in response to Smartsheet users who have been requesting more opportunities to connect and learn from each other. We've created this group in particular to address the recent addition of the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, and the game-changing solution Equity Bank has implemented to increase their loan efficiency. This solution has served the audience well when there is another rush to submit the loans once another round of funding is available. Today's group is specifically focused on Smartsheet's use for those of you in finance. And Mary's going to be sharing with us her story on how she's using Smartsheet as a solution and additional applications. We will close with that Q&A piece, and we expect that you'll have some good conversation there. Because we have a lot of folks attending, everyone's going to be muted for the webinar. Please feel free to type out your questions in the Q&A section throughout the webinar. And we've got a colleague here willing to help answer some of those as well. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Mary and share your story with the rest of the team. Thanks, Mary.
So I am from Equity Bank. Equity Bank is well known for its entrepreneurial spirit. We have built over the past decade one of the largest, fastest growing banks. I've been with the bank 3 years, and in those 3 years, I have done 7 acquisitions. We have bank locations in Kansas City, in the Kansas area, throughout the Kansas footprint, Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma. We didn't inherit a bank, we built one, so we really understand what entrepreneurs go through. And right now, a lot of entrepreneurs with smaller businesses are struggling. So when the CARE Act was passed, we knew we had to do something. So if we could go on to the next slide, looking at what the business need was, the CARE Act was passed, and that brought a challenge and an opportunity. We knew we needed to get to the smaller businesses that are our customers, and we needed to get to them quickly. We needed to offer them something that other banks weren't really gearing up to offer. A lot of the bigger banks backed up and said, nope, we're not going to do it. It's not profitable enough. But because of our background, we knew how important that would be. So the challenge with that faced us with the COVID-19, all of us are working in different locations. All of us are trying to bring ourselves together. We had already been using Smartsheet in a number of different areas, so we knew that it was part of our solution. We just didn't know what part. So we looked at the challenges that faced us. We have SBA Paycheck Protection Program. There weren't a lot of guidelines at first. They signed the CARE Act on a Friday, and there were no guidelines for the rest of the weekend, for the beginning of the week, but we were planning. We started to nail down what our current processes were, where there were maybe some funnel points, where we had some gaps maybe, and we started to work through how we were going to expedite customers' access to the PPP funds. We needed a full rollout in basically 3 days. From the time we had guidelines to actual live was under 24 hours. So the process had to be adjusted, and as the guidances were given, we had to pivot a little bit and definitely move towards what our customers needed. We had multiple business units that needed visibility into what we were doing at different points. So the Smartsheet solutions that we used, we have sheets, and we used update requests, we used forms, reports. We did both normal sheet reports and we did sheet summary reports. We built dashboards. we have sheet linking formulas, and we have a number of sheet summaries that were built out, depending on which sheet. It depended on what metric we were grabbing. So as we started to build out what our current process was, what our process for the PPP loans were, we started to identify how things would move from system to system, and how we would audit from system to system. So our solution had a number of steps. This is kind of a high level of where things would go. So we have a CRM system, and we captured quite a bit of the front-end process in that system, from contact to gathering data. We gave our customers basically a checklist of things that we thought they would need and told them we may adjust this when the guidelines come in, just so they could get started. There's a lot of paperwork that goes with payroll. All of us know that. So we sent them on a mission. Go find these things because this is what you're going to need. We even consulted with our HR department. You think this is it. So we brought in everybody that we thought could play a critical role in our customers' lives and understand what they're going to need. So we needed to know, how will those documents flow? What systems would we be using? What data points would be required? And what metrics would we track? So lines of businesses that were involved, we had our frontline lenders, but we also had a lot of branch managers and people chipping in, just really adding to the knowledge base and adding to people our customers could go to ask questions. We let marketing take the lead on getting them information, handing them the procedures, handing them the changes in procedures if we had to make any for guidelines. The credit analysts really had to focus in. We processed so many packets that the credit analysts had to be able to focus. Executive officers were doing approvals and things like that, and needed to be able to focus on the packets as they came to them. Our doc prep team would then prep the documents and then funding and make it through all of that process and track, where is my customer in the process? Have we gotten approval? Have we gotten approval from the SBA? What have we got and what do we need, so that we could expedite the whole process for them? As we looked at everything, we had a number of webinars, keeping our frontline up to date. We also gave them checklists, and so the customer and the frontline were checking those things, because we knew it would be critical that the first time that packet made it to our credit analyst, it had to be right. It couldn't be missing something. Because we needed that, checklists are a number one way to do that. So we told the front line, we were very honest with them, and we said, if it comes in and we have to send it back, that puts the next customer back in line. And we don't want anybody to have to wait. So if your customer doesn't have what they need, we need to tell them, you don't have what you need and I can't submit this yet. We need to be honest with them, and we need to be upfront. We need this documentation to get this done. As each of the data points were gathered, there has to be a point where you go, is my data right? Can I get the right information from it? So there were times in those first few days that we pivoted and we said, okay, now I need this information too. Sometimes that was internally, and sometimes that was from the customer, depending on what the guidelines came in with. SBA was rolling out in quick motion how they were going to do things, and sometimes they adjusted a little bit as well. So next will be what our solution was on the first day. On the first day, we provided some basic metrics, just giving the executive leadership an eyeball on what had made it through SBA PPP approval. That's what we were tracking in Smartsheet. We didn't track everything coming in and getting approved internally. We were tracking the SBA PPP approval. So once we put it in E-Tran and we had an SBA number, that's when it goes into Smartsheet for us. From there, we tracked the other processes, the doc prep, the booking, the quality control, so that we'd know where every single loan was and how it was being funded and if it was being funded in good time. So as with anything else, this is a really rough dashboard. It doesn't have a lot. It just served its purpose those first few days. The next slide shows where we were on day 3. On day 3, you see a few more metrics are building their way out. We're starting to report by region. We're starting to say how many customers were getting helped. We're talking about FTEs that were helped. We gathered that off of their applications. We gave the regions their own dashboard at this point, and we were looking at our 5-day overview so that we could see, are we collecting more metrics? Are we collecting less metrics? How are things going? And then we knew we needed to get these funded very quickly. So then I created reports that told them what was not in booking yet, what had not come back to booking for funding. So they could see, oh, I need to work on these customers. Each of the regions could get to their own information and not have to sift through everything that was being approved by having their own regional reports, and a link here on this dashboard as well. The next slide is how we ended. So we gathered some new statistics to say how many very small businesses we were helping in that mid-range of the small business, and then the larger small businesses. So that we could break down how were we helping people, which demographic are we helping the most. It's always fun as you're rolling through a process that's going this fast to see that you're making a huge difference, and we were feeling that we were making a huge difference. 5-day overview remains, the regional reporting was there, the not booked by a specific date was still there, but we were improving the dashboard and the metrics that was going to everyone. When we look at regional dashboard, the regions all manage their own work. So each of our regions is broken down as well. And the picture that you see that says SBA Resource Center, that is on our intranet. And our marketing team did an excellent job working through what our teams would need to be successful on the front line, to know about how they were going to get things to the operational units in good form and know what is happening with their customers. All of that was in the intranet and developed by our marketing team. So down below is a little bit deeper process on how things would flow and what they're going to see, and Smartsheet is highlighted in yellow. This is the point that things end up in Smartsheet. So the regions all had good visibility. Down below that, there were reports by region, and they could click into those reports and see just their region. The next obvious step for that was, I need to see my loans, and we have improved that dashboard by adding reports that are specific to the person who's logged in. I want to see my loans. I want to see my contacts. So all of those things were added to the dashboard here in the last day. So the results that came from using Smartsheet, we could track the process. Our CEO, Brad, who was the entrepreneur that started Equity, was in Smartsheet in the dashboard talking to the progress that was being made. He could talk to his teams. He could say, here's where we're at. Here's where we need to be. Here's what's in the pipeline. Here's what I see. And he could be the coach that we needed. Visibility to all business units, less phone calls to the operational units once everybody had the tools in their hands. Executive management absolutely appreciated the different dashboards. As they needed to drill in, they could get where they needed to go. The data set integration, we could break things down in a way that our other systems, I could bring information in a couple times a day, and I could actually cross-reference to make sure everything that was put in the pipeline in our CRM system made it into Smartsheet, which then made it to the SBA and was approved properly. We could speak to loans that were pulled out. We could speak to loans that were denied for some reason. We could speak to that very clearly in Smartsheet. Collaborative workspace, you can't do what we did without Smartsheet. Everybody was in. There was one day, there were 20 people in the main sheet. So we decided to create a report for each of those business units so that they could break down their work and not have to see everybody else's. And it then sped up the main sheet for the people who had to be in that main data set. So part of our lesson learned was create a report. Don't have everybody in the main sheet, because all of a sudden we just started seeing just a list of people in the sheet. So by creating a report, it got rid of that. It sped up the sheet, made things work better. The automation that happens, so those dashboards were instant. At one point, the SBA went down for 2 hours, and I got a call from the CEO who said, I don't see my dashboard moving. My dashboard always moves. So in that automation, he knew that he was getting current data constantly. So love the automation. And for the benefits for our customers, we helped 78,580 employees to get a paycheck. We assisted 1,658 companies. We were fast when they needed the money. We were helping all of our regions to keep their small towns up and going. Next slide is questions and answers.
So at this point, we'll go ahead and unmute people. Kim, Kim has a couple quick things to say, and then we'll leave it up to everybody to ask the questions that they have. So
Mary,
go ahead, Kim.
Mary, we really appreciate you taking the time to share your story with us and put those slides together. That's super impressive. 78,000 employees, 168 companies, incredible. And there are many friends of ours that still haven't had their funds given to them. So very, very nice work there. I'm going to hand it off to the attendees. I don't want to take away your time, so please feel free to ask.
All right. Everybody's unmuted, so go ahead, and if you have a question, feel free to ask.
Hi, this is Jeff. I don't have a question, but I just want to say you did an awesome job on this, and thank you for sharing it with us.
Absolutely.
I have a question, Mary. This is Kim again. Were there specific templates that you used, or did you just build from the ground up, scratch, when this CARE Act came out?
So we built from scratch. There wasn't really a template that we really thought would fit the bill. And because Smartsheet is so diverse, it allows us to pivot and do what we need to do. We saw a need on a Friday night, late at night, to gather specific information, created the fields, and started to build out what we needed. So didn't use a template. I've used templates in the past, though, and a lot of my ideas came from templates. But in this particular case, we just built it from scratch. That's
awesome. Any advice that you'd like to give the folks who are more in the beginning phases, I guess, and hoping they can get some submissions in at rapid fire once the funds come back online and available?
So it was very important for Equity to basically understand their current process and what our availability was to get into the SBA system. So through the E-Trans system, we knew we needed extra licenses, and as soon as the CARE Act was signed, we were asking for licenses. But just having the employee base that was willing to be there all night, multiple nights in a row, that's how it happened. Our teams are dedicated to our customers and really put in what it took. Tracking it is just one little piece, and Smartsheet did that for us. A lot of it was just sheer will, I think, and and being in those systems. So identifying and knowing what systems we would need to use brought us to the fact that we would need more licenses in ETRAN. We projected large numbers from the moment the CARE Act was signed. So we set ourselves up for the win, thinking that we would have large numbers.
How are you doing your documentation for the audit trail? Because you had mentioned, you know, it's federal funds, definitely going to be audited. How have you set that process up? So each of our systems we audit through. I audit the CRM system and the input and the approval through the CRM system. I pull all of that information out and I do a cross compare from some sheets that I created that take that data, and I bring it in for an import, and then I push it to a base data sheet that does some formulas and does some calculations. And it compares based on their CRM ID, which most CRM systems gives a customer an ID number. And it says, if I see it here, then I should see it there. And so we can prove for every customer that was approved where they landed in the SBA process, and that they made it through to booking and funding in the time that they were supposed to. So the two systems have to balance, and the way that I did that is I bring all of that information into Smartsheet, and I do a cross compare by CRM ID. Awesome. Does anyone on the call have any questions for Mary or comments besides Jeff? And thank you for your participation.
Actually, I do have one question. For the data that you were putting in, did you use a form to collect that directly from the customers, or were your staff putting the data into Smartsheet?
So our staff was actually putting that information in, because Smartsheet happened at the point in the process that we were getting SBA approval. And SBA is not terribly user-friendly. It's pretty rudimentary. So we would get an email from them, and then we would have staff actually entering that data set into Smartsheet. We would then compare with some index match that the numbers actually matched what we had in our CRM system, so that we could make sure that everything matched all the way across all the data points. We also use our cold storage system. So when it gets to quality control, they are checking our cold storage system to make sure all documentation made it in. A lot of index match.
Oh, go ahead, Mary.
So if I had to make some suggestions, I was at the conference this year and went to a couple of the formula sessions, and they mentioned to use index match instead of VLOOKUP because it would help the efficiency of your sheet, and I can validate that. I was using quite a few VLOOKUPs when I very first started this process, switched them over to index match, and it sped things up. Definitely use @row when you can on your formulas as well.
Thank you all for attending. Thank you, Mary, for presenting. We really appreciate your insights and the solutions that you've shared. And we look forward to the next round going through, and hopefully it's not as painful for you this time, having the experience and solution that you've built.
Yeah, and we'll follow up with a recording of today's presentation, and let us know if you have any questions. Definitely reach out to your account manager for deeper conversations about your own use case and kind of where you're at today in the process, as well as your customer success managers, Drew Ridgway or Ali Schmidt. And we appreciate your attendance. Thanks, everybody. Mary, thank you so much. Again, really appreciate your time. Thanks for sharing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.